Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really pleased to have an old friend of mine, John Rubino. He's not old, he's just
Yes.
a longtime friend, I should say. Good guy, really one of the easiest interviews that I do, I think, because he has so much knowledge, and I don't really have to talk that much. My wife reminds me I should talk a lot less anyway. So John's here. We're going to give him a chance to talk about the reason I want to talk to him today or have him talk to us is a recent article he wrote for his paid Substack subscribers titled, "Is Tokenized Gold the Future of Money?" Well, that's a very interesting question. I think a very important issue for people to become aware of, because quite clearly, fiat currencies are probably in their last days, or there's going to be some kind of a reset, some kind of a monetary reset. There's going to have to be with the world's reserve currency, the US dollar, and its future clearly in trouble because there's no way the debt, how many trillions now? I lost count with the big beautiful bill just being passed. We're adding trillions more. So yeah, this is a very timely topic. John, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this issue.
Hey Jay, great to talk to you again.
Right, so good to have you. So gold and money, and JP Morgan said gold is money, everything else is credit. And I guess maybe the world is learning that lesson now. So I guess probably don't have to talk to our audience about why gold is money or why we should be thinking about it. But we do have, as Lynn Alden reminds us in her book, Broken Money, that as technologies change, monetary systems change as well. And so with the latest technologies now really are making current monetary system kind of obsolete. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, the current monetary system is broken beyond repair, regardless, even in the absence of the internet and of cryptocurrencies and things
Mhm.
like that, and of gold. Um, this financial system, because it's based on fiat currencies, gave governments unlimited credit cards in effect. They've maxed those cards out. Now we're drowning in debt. So the system breaks regardless. But at the same time, a lot of interesting stuff is happening. Like you
Mhm.
said, on the monetary front, technology is making a lot of things possible, including digital gold. This could be how we go back to the gold standard,
Mhm.
where we have gold stored in a vault, but tokens based on that gold, where the gold backs the tokens, trading on blockchains. So,
Mhm.
in effect, gold, cryptocurrency, moving around the world with a mouse click, instantaneously, zero friction. It's an interesting idea, but it's also an idea that goes way back. I first met Gold Money's James Turk in the
Yeah.
1990s because he
Mhm.
had some patents on digital gold currency. And at the time, I thought that was really interesting. So I
Sure.
interviewed him for a magazine article. And we met that way and became friends. But that was back in the late 1990s. There was the concept of digital gold. And it never worked back then for technological and regulatory reasons. And it's only lately that it's being resurrected via cryptocurrencies and the blockchain and everything. So uh, the the new digital gold is a stable coin brought out
Mhm.
by Tether, a
Mhm.
cryptocurrency company. And what they did was they put a lot of gold in a vault, and then they issued these stable coins, which are basically tokens that trade on a blockchain, like cryptocurrencies. But unlike cryptocurrencies, which fluctuate in value and aren't backed by anything, in theory, these tokens are backed 100% by gold.
Mhm.
So it's real money to the
Mhm.
extent that you trust Tether to
Yeah.
maintain their vault. But it trades instantaneously like cryptocurrency. So it's really an interesting hybrid that could end up being the future of money if we get the various parts right, because somehow we got to be able to trust that the gold or silver or whatever is actually in the vault in
Mhm.
quantities capable of fully backing these digital currencies. And that's a big ask right
Yeah.
there, because we don't even trust the US government to have its gold in Fort Knox, right?
Yeah.
That's why That's why Trump hasn't audited Fort Knox yet, was he talked about
Yeah,
doing it, and then he sent some people over to see if the gold was really there, and for whatever reason, it turned out not to be. So now we don't hear about that anymore. That's locked up with the Epstein files
yeah,
in things that
right.
we're not going to see or hear. Um, so, this is a big deal, and it's not easy to do, but it's fun to watch it be tried.
Hmm.
And the Tether gold stablecoin is popular. It's getting a lot of people using it, and the numbers are starting to grow. So now the final piece of this puzzle for gold bugs is that if something like that works, then Tether has to go get more gold and put it in its vault in order to cover or back a larger number of tokens out there. That increases the demand for gold and probably increases the price over time. So digital gold might get us to $10,000 gold via just rising demand for these tokens. We'll have to see, but that's one more reason that the gold story is pretty awesome at this point.
Right. So John, let's see how we might be able to put this into action. If we own, do both, let's say you and I, we both have accounts with Tether, or how would that work? And then if I wanted to pay you for some service rendered or something I purchased from you, I could transfer X amount of gold, probably grams of gold, from my Tether account to your Tether account. Is that how it would work?
I haven't tried it, but that's
Yeah.
probably more or less how it works.
So it would need
As
to
long
be
as long
people,
as
yeah, would need to be people that have accounts at Tether, perhaps.
I would
I'm not
expect
sure.
that early on at least, and
Yeah,
then maybe
early on.
things broaden out where
Yeah.
you end up with the ability to accept lots of different cryptos and crypto adjacent
Mhm.
kinds of code
Mhm.
and get credit for it and buy and sell and stuff like that. We might broaden out into a world where um, our laptop computer is capable of that kind of processing. But I really don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not that interested in trying. And it could be an age thing. Thank you for saying I'm not old, Jay, but I'm officially a senior citizen.
Well, we
And
both are, and I got
yeah,
a few more trips around the sun than you have, John.
yeah,
You're
just a
just a
few though.
chicken.
Yeah. But so the fact that gold and silver, regardless of what else happens in the world and of cryptos and governments and things like that, they're probably going to go way up.
Mhm.
So I think that my stacks, my capital right now that is stored in real money like gold and silver, are generational wealth for my family
Mhm.
already that is going to go up in value. And so that makes me kind of lazy. I don't really feel the need to understand a gold-backed stable coin in terms of my own finances because I think I've got the next decade covered, and
Yeah.
I'm not looking very far beyond that financially. But a lot of people are not in that boat.
Yeah.
Younger people are very comfortable with the concept of cryptos.
Right.
And but okay, one other really interesting part of the story is that the fact that a gold-based or gold-backed coin is becoming popular kind of backs the thesis that cryptocurrencies basically create gold bugs because to appreciate, say, Bitcoin, you have to kind of understand what money is.
Mhm.
And once you understand what money is, you understand the difference between sound and unsound money. And even though you still love Bitcoin, that makes you respect and appreciate gold and silver.
Mhm.
So voila, you're a gold bug, and I think these gold-backed stable coins are going to do a lot of that heavy lifting too. Intellectually, it's going to interest people who then have to learn why gold, and then they have to learn what is money, and you create millions of new gold bugs around the world who may want gold-backed cryptos, but also
Yeah.
want physical gold because you don't want one without the other, really. You want various forms of real money. So some of it survives the coming chaos.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if you were a Bitcoin maximalist,
Yeah.
you still appreciate the idea of having gold and silver coins on hand that the government can't confiscate. So it's
Right.
creating gold bugs. It's other things being equal, making gold and silver go up. So I'm all in favor of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I should mention that, of course, Tether also has U.S. treasuries, and presumably some treasuries from other sovereign nations as well. And as a matter of fact, I think Tether or stable coins are now the fourth largest purchaser holders of U.S. Treasuries. And Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury Besant has recently talked about it becoming a $2 trillion market for U.S. Treasuries by 2028, he thinks. So maybe they're counting their chickens before they're hatched, looking for ways to finance the U.S. Treasury. But they clearly, the Trump administration is clearly inclined to use technology, I think, more than the previous administration in trying to solve some of these issues. And is that your impression as well, that they may be a little more tech friendly than the previous administration?
Well, I think conceptually governments love the idea of something that creates new demand for treasury paper, right? You
Right,
know,
of course.
if it causes $2 trillion dollars worth of demand for treasuries, that means they can keep on running their massive deficits and spending money on everything from of invading their neighbors to buying elections and the things that governments normally do. They can keep on doing that for a while. So obviously, they think that's interesting, but they also have plans in place for confiscating all those treasuries if need be, or the wealth that's related to those treasuries. So I don't see the point of a stable coin that is backed by paper that's losing
Mhm,
value in a
mhm.
disorderly way. So I think that's more of a thing that appeals to people who don't quite understand where we are
Yeah.
in the credit super cycle right now. But I think governments probably see it and appreciate it.
Mhm.
And Trump is he's very open to new ideas for a guy his
Right.
age. You know, what is he like? He's like 80 years old now, and
Yeah.
he's like America is going to be the world capital of cryptos. You know, and
Uh,
cryptos have only existed for the last 10% of his life. You know, but um, but yeah, he's a very creative promoter.
and he has a
And
lot of younger people around him that do understand it too. For example, what's his name? Sachs from the 4 and 1 group out there, a billionaire IT guy that is trying to remember. It's not David Sachs. I forget his first name. I don't know if
that sounds
yeah,
familiar. Yeah, yeah,
he's Trump's crypto guy, and so he has a lot of those billionaire Silicon Valley types that are very interested in what he's doing, what the
well,
administration's doing.
and Trump and Melania already started their own stable coins,
Yeah,
right? They
and,
are
and
crypto
here's what I'm just
entrepreneurs.
John, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the infrastructure and how this is evolving from fiat money to the crypto, digital money, the digital world that we're living in. But it's my understanding that Tether, for example, the infrastructure of Tether, they have all these different stable coins that's part of their infrastructure. So they would presumably buy and sell those stable coins. As a matter of fact, besides treasuries and besides gold, they also have a stable coin that is a composite of stable coins, I understand, which I have no interest in at all. Why would I want that? And as Alistair McLeod points out, stable coins are really just another form of fiat unless you have gold attached to it. So
Well, yeah, and unless you can absolutely trust
yeah,
the gold that's attached to it. So yeah, these are okay. Okay, basically, the way revolutions happen normally is that an idea sounds amazing and huge amounts of capital flow into it because every business model involves that technology. So it sounds like it can't lose, and then a million things get started and financed, and then 99% of them blow up. That happened with the dot coms back in the day. That happened with junk bonds in the 1980s. That happened with subprime mortgage
hmm,
paper in the
right,
2000s. And now it's happening in various parts of the financial sector with AI stocks and things like
yeah,
that. But so anyhow, the whole crypto big bang, which is happening
hmm,
right now, necessarily has to go that way because there's no way to tell ahead of time who's going to succeed. You know, who's going to be the Amazon of this market
right,
versus the pets.com or something like that,
hmm,
because you cannot tell by looking at them.
yeah,
And so I think it's going to be a fascinating process. I think it's going to end up costing $10 trillion dollars in gullible investor capital
oh, yeah,
when it blows up. But I think some viable stuff is going to emerge from it. And I wouldn't even pretend to have
mhm,
the technical chops to say what would be the viable thing at the end of all this.
yeah,
But it's fun to watch. And if it makes gold and silver go up in value over the next 10 years, I am totally on board, you know?
yeah. Well, it's the whole thing, in my view. I mean, the main issue to me, John, is again this issue of trust. That's number one. Is Tether trustable? I guess people trust it now until something bad happens. Then, if something really bad happens, then there'll be a loss of confidence. Then probably government will try to step in and be our great protector, right? They're really,
Oh, Jay,
government.
could I interrupt for 1 second? Because
Yeah.
there's a really interesting thing happening here where we've got an intersection of two of those manias right now.
Uh-huh.
With AI emerging at the same
Right.
time, cryptos are emerging, and AI is a threat to cryptos
Really.
because a sufficiently powerful AI can break encryption.
Oh, okay.
And so that makes a lot of our financial accounts not necessarily empty, but vulnerable. And
Oh,
so cryptos are out there, traveling via encrypted pathways. And to the extent that AI gets better and better at breaking encryption, then you've got kind of an arms race going on where the encryption has to get better before the AIs get smarter,
uh-huh.
or somebody comes up with an AI that's so powerful that it can break any encryption, and they rule the world. So there's all this stuff happening at the same time.
Well, we think about robotics and robots that turn against us
hmm
human beings, and I guess that would be another version of it in a way.
Well,
Um,
robots that are run by AI
right.
are basically an unbeatable army, at least. I mean, you've seen those Boston Dynamics robots that
Yeah. Yeah.
dance better than I think I anyhow, yeah, I've written about stuff like that in the past, and and they're gorgeous to watch and absolutely terrifying when you think that they could have AI with volition, in other words, with a set of preferences running them at some point, and there will be millions of them out there. So yeah, that's another big deal that we got to worry about.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, I mean, there's just so many unknowns right now, and we don't know how all this is going to play out. But, Bitcoin, of course, is something that's been all the rage. It's the leading crypto. Some people just say crypto maximists are looking for $1 million, countless $1 million per Bitcoin. And I guess that's the kind of thing that would sort of rule the world if you had the numbers get that high so that the people that own Bitcoin might have all the wealth in the world. Well, I don't know. They'd have to be
Well,
attached to real stuff though, wouldn't they? The cryptos
well,
have to be attached somehow. I mean, could a Bitcoin be attached directly to gold, for example?
well, okay. If Bitcoin is the Amazon,
Yeah,
in the sense that it's the thing that survives and thrives when
right.
all the chaos is over, then the numbers get really scary big. And I wouldn't, presume to say that's going to happen or not going to happen. It's just, I don't think it's knowable at this point, although a lot of people think they know. And
Yeah, Michael
you
Saylor,
know,
for example.
yeah, well, and he's putting his money and his stockholders' money where his mouth is, and so
Yeah,
far it's worked brilliantly. I mean,
yeah,
that guy he executed the most audacious trade that has ever been because he took other people's money, bet the farm with it on something that worked spectacularly. So you got to give the guy credit
yeah.
for guts and for timing and everything. But I don't know how that plays out either. But
No,
yeah, as far as Bitcoin connected to gold, those seem like two separate things.
yeah,
But gold stored in a safe vault and trading via the blockchain
right,
seems like a very understandable concept
right.
that's already technologically being done right now. So we just have to get it through its growing pains and
Yeah,
see, and maybe that's what when we do our monetary reset, that could be the global financial system when it happens, where we just take all the gold that's in government vaults, we back stable coins
hmm,
with it, which is kind of, what you would have under the gold standard without stable coins, where,
hmm,
the dollars that the government is creating and putting into the system are fully backed by gold. Therefore, we trust them.
hmm.
So it's a stable coin trading on blockchain kind of world is not really that unfamiliar or alien from the point of view of a gold standard
Hmm.
with paper and digital currency trading based on it. So I think we could
Right.
get there. See, the problem is the problem with the gold standard, going back to it. You have to devalue the currencies by 75% to get there. In other words, to have enough gold
Yeah.
valued at a given price in order
Yeah.
to back the currencies.
Well, that's happening, John. That's happening before our eyes right now. The market
It is indeed.
is clearly taking gold to much higher levels because people are realizing that the you know the currency that's denominated in is not worth as much. So that's a function of the market. It seems to me that you would need though a custodian, and I mean, you and I probably would prefer private sector custodians to a government custodian because they can, if they have total control, then they can pretty much do with you what they want. Um, but it's sort of hard for me to see how this doesn't ultimately end up in the hands of government, and governments will be the custodian of our gold. And I mean, but like as you say, we had a gold standard before, and then we had an international gold standard, which countries respected until 1971. But it seems to me that ultimately it's almost like countries are going to want to have control. It's like that attempt in 1966 when there was an attempt in the website. A company had you could open an account and trade with each other in gold or silver until 9/11 happened, and then the Patriot Act, and they started controlling, not wanting individuals to be free they wanted to know what we were doing with our money, is what it amounts to. Can you foresee a chance of that not happening going forward? It just seems like that's almost inevitable. And then you have the other issue with the geopolitical divisions that are taking place now with the BRICS. Clearly, building up their gold supplies dramatically. Some of them are, most of them are, I think, and moving towards some sort of a gold-backed system, I think. So I guess we just don't know how it's going to play out. But is that a concern of yours that government will end up basically, essentially, taking away our freedoms by owning the system?
Well, if we're going to trust the issue of a currency,
Yeah,
it kind of ends up having to be centralized with the
yeah,
government at some point because, and the way you keep governments honest in the gold standard is to have gold and the currency be exchangeable.
yeah,
So the minute you start creating too much new currency, people feel that, they feel the loss of purchasing power and they
yeah,
go to the government and they demand gold. Then the government's gold starts to disappear and it has to shrink the money supply in order to bring things back into balance. So as long as you have free exchangeability, the
yeah.
government is under pressure to maintain the value of the
Right,
currency. But of course, when things get a little too crazy, they just close the gold window like Nixon did. So that,
right.
there's no perfect system,
Yeah,
but there are checks and balances
yeah,
that can be put in place that in normal times will maintain a stable money supply and stable prices and everything. And that's, in reality, in this world, maybe that's the best we can hope for is something that lasts until the next existential crisis.
yeah.
And at which point you have bigger things to worry about.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And, I just think that, yeah, as you say, there's those checks and balances in place as long as people are able to buy and sell their gold or with take out their physical gold and, take it from their accounts. And there's that check and balance to keep governments. But, governments don't like that. And I guess if a populace was educated as to what money is, that would be very helpful. If they really understood that gold is money and the rest of the stuff we think is money is a fraud, really, then it would help maybe the citizenry to care a little bit more about what their politicians are doing. But maybe that's asking too much from the general public. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
But that's really important.
there's nothing like having your money evaporate to educate a
That's right.
populace on what exactly money is,
Yeah. And
how did it do this? Yeah.
and that's actually what's happening now. I think people are recognizing that, especially the younger people are recognizing it because they're saying, I can't buy a home. I don't have the American dream anymore. And they're looking at the reality and they're saying, this kind of sucks. We don't like it the way it is. And why? Well, because we're debasing our currency. And so they're understanding young people going to Bitcoin and to cryptos is a big part of it. But I
Yeah.
really wonder, John, you probably don't take any kind of real view then on Bitcoin, its direction or anything. You're probably agnostic to that, right?
Well, I'm agnostic in the sense I don't understand it well enough to deserve to have an opinion.
Yeah,
So yeah, I've never been able to get my head around the idea of a base money, the real money that literally doesn't exist. It,
right.
it is computer code. There is no physical Bitcoin.
Yeah,
And, it might still work because most of our money is digital. Most
yeah,
of our money does not
of
exist.
course. Yep.
So I get that there's there's an argument to be made that Bitcoin can be the globe's base money, but I just cannot wrap my head around the concept well enough to say, oh, I want to own some,
Yeah.
because
What the value of it
it doesn't
should be
exist.
and that sort of
It
thing.
it has no physical reality.
Well, I just mentioned it because, Michael Oliver, who I think I was looking at a recent analysis of Bitcoin, and he clearly doesn't like it. What he sees in his momentum, you don't see it in the price, but the momentum is clearly showing from his point of view that Bitcoin is due for a tremendous decline. And he equates it, I think, was with the S&P before the 1987 crash. He says it looks exactly like the S&P before the 1987 crash. So he's extremely bearish. And then there's Jim Chanos that I saw, the renowned short seller, who was saying you have all these companies that are being created and they go out and they buy Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin should be a heck of a lot higher than it is now. Somebody's selling. Who's selling? He wants to know. So those are two skeptics I mentioned. Also, Alistair McLeod is quite skeptical as well in terms of. So I guess you can be skeptical and still have questions about where it's going. I mean, Michael Oliver liked the idea, the concept. I mean, he's a libertarian. He liked the idea of Bitcoin, but he says he just doesn't see it in the charts. And so I guess if you're agnostic, if you have some sort of a way, a non-emotional way to determine value, and I like Michael's work as a technician for that reason, I think it's something to consider anyway before you go out and put a lot of money into Bitcoin. I mean, I've had one of the ETFs in my newsletter, which I just sold for a nice profit. Uh, I don't know, who knows? But clearly, if Bitcoin and other cryptos head down, maybe we'll see the ones that are attached to gold not head down, because clearly Bitcoin is traded really with the Nasdaq, and Michael points out the Nasdaq 100 is where Bitcoin is so closely correlated with that, and so we shall see. Um, any closing thoughts on this topic, and anything else you'd like to say?
Well, Bitcoin is basically a tech stock.
Yeah.
Like you said, it trades pretty much in tandem with the Nasdaq.
Hmm.
And if it's going to become money, its trading patterns have to stabilize.
Hmm.
It can't go up by 1,000% and then down by 80%. You can't
Right.
have that happen with money.
Right.
So okay, taking the Bitcoin as money case here, as it gets more broadly owned by strong hands, people who aren't just going to trade it,
Right.
then its trading should even out at something approaching its intrinsic value given the situation of the world, something like that.
Yeah,
So
but
you
what
get
would
a,
that be
I
unless it's attached to something real?
have no idea. Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
problem.
So
Yeah. All right, John. Well, thank you very much for your thoughts on this. I mean, I'm trying to figure this all out. I know most people that are thinking about it are trying to understand it. So I want to thank you for your contribution here in helping us do that, John. And I should say, um, it's Substack, John's Substack for paid subscribers. You would have had a lot of this information already, and he does excellent work on all kinds of topics related to not just to the financial world, but a lot of other interesting topics as well. John, thank you so much for joining us once again.
thanks, Jay.
All right, folks, that's it for this session. I should mention that Kirstine Brower, the CEO of Hydrograph Clean Power, and Bob, she did an interview with Bob Moriarty and myself, and that is available now. You can see that on my YouTube channel. I think one of the most exciting companies that I follow, the only company that can produce pure, pristine graphene and do it at a very low cost. So this is one of the most exciting. I think that's a tech stock, actually. and expected to be trading on the NASDAQ in the not too distant future as well. Also, I interviewed a company that's trading at around 3 or 4 cents. Just one of those companies I follow in my newsletter that's just ridiculously undervalued. I had the chairman of that company, and that will be available on my YouTube channel on Wednesday. So keep an eye on your Substack email and for future guests like John and a lot of these little penny companies that I think have real upside potential. It's an exciting time for the gold and silver markets, no doubt about it. Challenging times, but yeah, it's interesting times, no doubt about it, and lots of good content on my YouTube channel as well as John's Substack. So consider subscribing to John's excellent service as well. That's it for today. Until we meet again, goodbye and God's blessings to you.